Hey guys, welcome back to the Another Excuse podcast, where we chat to founders, creators, and self-starters about how they started and where they are now. Today's guest is Allan, Parmentier, the founder of Supernova Brands. I really enjoyed this conversation. We speak about things like how he started his company by importing some selfie sticks from Hong Kong and selling them here in South Africa. We chat about the balance between risk-taking and comfort from a degree. And we speak about work-life balance and how he enjoys water sports and how he decompresses on the weekends but is able to work really hard during the week. That's just a few snippets from what we discussed today. It's a wide-ranging conversation. We cover a lot of ground and I really enjoyed it. I hope you do too. Enjoy the show. Hi, Allan. Thanks for joining me today. Just to get started and to get a bit of context, could you tell me a bit about yourself and your journey and how you got to where you are today?
Hey, Byron. Nice to get onto the podcast. Super excited. I'm a Belgian, 35 years old. Ended up in South Africa 13 years ago. Actually in 2010, straight after the World Cup, the Soccer World Cup. I ended up here because of an exchange with my universities back in the days. Always inspired Cape Town, particularly because of the water sports that I like. And then I ended up meeting an American guy who we started the business with. And we kind of just rolled into it, into what the company is now, Supernova Brands. So we are import distribution business for tech and home and living products. That's kind of where we are at right now.
Awesome. So can we go a bit deeper into Supernova? What is Supernova and how exactly does it work?
Perfect. Yeah. So Supernova Brands is an import distribution business. What that means is that we basically import and source all kind of different products. When we started the business, we had quite a bit of a wider focus, but now we really focus in two different categories that we play in. So the one is tech or consumer electronics, and then the other category is home and living. So for the consumer electronics, how our business works is we've got either distribution rights for brands. So we exclusively launch a brand into South Africa with everything that comes with it. So we do the brand launches, we bring the products into retail, we do the merchandising of it, etc. So we literally built an overseas brand in South Africa. Or what else we do is we actually private label. So particularly in the home and living space, in that division of the business unit, we private label for the big retailers in South Africa, meaning that we'll curate a whole catalog of products together. We'll either label it with the in-house brand, or we actually use one of our private label brands, and then we curate a range for the South African retailers. Retail-wise or customer-wise, we've got two big niches that we obviously play in. E-commerce is quite big for us. So 55-60% of our turnover is coming from e-commerce. And then a good 40% is coming from brick and mortar, which are your big retail chains here in South Africa. And that's in a nutshell of what we do.
And why would a brand go through you rather than them go to the retail outlets themselves? Because it's not my area of expertise, so I'm just curious.
No, definitely. I mean, it's so first of all, it's actually quite a bit that comes with it. So from the beginning point of view, like you need a warehouse, you need a good distribution channels. Regulatory, there's quite a lot of complications that come with it. So there's a lot of compliances you have to apply for to warrant, for example, any consumer electronics needs particular certifications. You need to apply with the local regulatory bodies. So there's quite a bit that comes with it. And then just the connection with the retailer. So sometimes it happens that a brand goes directly to a retailer, but it's actually better in order to have a distributor. Well, I'm saying better, but in the majority of the cases, there are business cases where it doesn't make sense. But if there's some margin in it, it's better to actually have a distributor who can service your brand. So very often a retailer is not going to commit to all the stock up front. They'll give you a forecast of stock for the next 3-6 months, We hold that stock in our warehouses, and then they basically draw down from that stock. And then we give them a lot of support there. So we help them with the listings, we help them with online marketing, we help them with reviewing of the products, we help them with merchandise. So there's a lot of different services that actually come with it that becomes a whole business on its own.
Right. That makes sense. Yeah, there's a lot more to it. What gave you the idea to start Supernova?
Good question. I think different as other businesses, we kind of like morphed into the business what we are now. We started with a totally different, I mean, it's not different, but very long story short, we imported selfie sticks, built a brand around it. This is now like 9 years ago, just because we saw an opportunity. We sold it to a lot of promotion companies, got it into small retailers. And actually it's from there on that our business evolved. So when we started off, we never planned to become an import distribution business. It's actually throughout the years that our business started evolving more and more into import distribution business as the shape that it has right now.
That's really cool. And what gave you the confidence to give the selfie stick thing a go?
I think it's hustle. I think it's just seeing an opportunity. So at the time, we were working in So basically, I studied in South Africa, and then someone asked me if I could help them set up a logistics office for a big supply chain company. It was a global company. If I could help them set up an office in Cape Town, I did that for eventually a year and a bit, and it really allowed me to learn about full supply chain, importing, everything that comes with it. So at the time, there was a friend of mine in Hong Kong who said, like, "Flip, man, I've seen selfie sticks." I mean, like, obviously now everyone knows that it's the most random product, but at the time it was very, very new. And I still remember he came to South Africa, and then we were in a restaurant here in Cape Town, and then he pulled it out, put his cell phone into it, had like the remote, and we were in the restaurant, and everyone in the restaurant was like, "Flip, like, what is that? Like, how does that work?" And obviously the angle of, I mean, it's like the early days of GoPro and action cameras and everything. So everyone asked the question, and that's when I was like, actually, like, it's rare that I've seen such a interest into a product. They just bring in 1,000 units. We'll create our own brand. We do our custom packaging. We created a website. They just do it, bring it in, and see where it gets us. So it's more seeing a small opportunity, never the idea of let's create a big business. They just have an opportunity. Let's take the opportunity and go for it.
And did you have to take any risks apart from buying the amount of stock? Were there any extra risks you had to take, or did you see it as just quite a low risk, let's see what happens approach?
Yeah, I think fairly low risk. We started the business in rands. We started it with a capital of 50,000 rand, if I'm mistaken. So it was my business partner and myself. I mean, at the time we didn't even see each other even as business partner. It was more just like, it's a good hustle. Let's buy some stock. So we each put in, I think, 25K, which in hindsight, I mean, that's a fairly low risk. So even if the stock wouldn't sell, too bad. But I mean, 25,000 rand, like, that's a good holiday anyway. It's definitely worth taking the risk. We figured at the time. So it's a lot different as other businesses. I know, like, if you look at the startup world these days, like, you kind of already need to raise a couple of $1 million before you can get going. Our business is totally opposite. Like, it was fairly low risk. Let's take a punt at it and see where it brings us.
And you say that's fairly low risk, but I feel like for some people, 25,000 Rand is still a big chunk of change. And putting that amount of money in and investing in yourself could still be considered risky for some people. Why do you think some people are afraid of even a risk like that?
Yeah, I think it obviously comes with a risk, but I think once I mean, obviously we did our calculations, and it basically showed us if we sell a minimum amount, let's say we brought in 1,000 units, and if we sell a minimum amount of 250 units at that price, we basically recover our basic expenses that we've put into it. We recovered that back already. So the risk is of we have to sell 250 units or more. I'm just using a number now, but it was our profit margin was really good at it at the time. So if you look at the full risk scenario, it wasn't as it wasn't so risky actually. And it's, to be honest, like, yes, it was a lot of money for us at the time because we weren't earning high salaries either. I mean, I came straight out of university. It was my first job, similar for my business partner. So it definitely was a lot of money at the time that we invested in it. But from a risk point of view, like, sometimes you just have to fully commit to it and put it on the line for it. It's my, like, it's not your whole savings that you've saved up for years that you're suddenly putting at one opportunity. It's a salary for a couple of months that we put into it. If it would fail, we would have been able to recover. It would haven't been the best scenario, but we would have been able to recover. And I think that's where, if you work out your risk scenarios there, it was worth the risk for us.
That makes sense. Yeah, I think a lot of people aren't as intentional as that. And so they see the 25K figure and they're like, oh shit, that's too much for me. I'm not going to do it. But when you weigh up the pros and cons and look at the risk profiles, selling 250 units or like a quarter of the amount of units that you buy seems like a more realistic goal. And then you're breaking even and then the rest is profit. And that just makes sense.
100%. And that's also what we did as a business. So we never used, up until a good couple of years back, because of the scale of it, but we actually we never took outside capital. So even from ourselves, we didn't put any additional capital into the business anymore. We literally just, we were stingy, like extremely stingy. We didn't take a salary for the first 6 months or a year, if not mistaken. And even then we had very, very minimal salaries. Every single rand we made, we kept in a business, and we used those profits to actually just buy a higher stock amount. And I think literally it was tough. Like, you're surviving, but you know that you're doing it for the better of the business, and it just keeps your risk profile quite low because you're not using someone else's money. You don't use loans. You're just using the profits that you've generated. And obviously your buying purchases become bigger and bigger, but your risk initially stays your risk of the 25K and the time you've spent in it.
Yeah, I can imagine that also helps scale the company a lot faster than if you continuously taking profits throughout that whole time.
Exactly. And I think that's, if I have to name one of the recipes of success that we've had, was that we were extremely strict with it. In hindsight, maybe too strict. I think we should have allowed ourselves a little bit more and celebrated some of the risks or some of the wins that we had. Like, I think it's good to celebrate a win, also financially for yourself after a while. And I think we didn't do that for a long time. But without a doubt, it was one of the major contributions to the success of the business now.
Wow, that's fascinating. And so you studied law. What made you decide that pursuing a career in law wasn't for you?
I really enjoyed law, and I enjoyed studying it. So I majored, or my masters were in corporate and commercial law. So I did one in corporate and then one in commercial here in South Africa. And I always enjoyed the corporate business side of it, but in saying that, I did enjoy the corporate side of it. So I really enjoyed the business side of it, but actually I didn't. I did a couple of internships, and I didn't really see myself working in a very corporate environment. Plus, I enjoy the freedom. I always ask myself the question, like, if for example, the business would turn down, or I would sell it, like, would I ever go back to the law field or in the corporate world? And I just don't think it's in my personality, or I don't see myself in that space anymore. In saying that, my studies were extremely beneficial to where I have gotten now to. Like, my business knowledge really helped me in actually setting up a lot of the transactions we've done so far. So it has been beneficial in my career.
Yeah, that, like, for me, I did BCom economics and laws, and the law side I realized just like wasn't for me, and also struggled to see myself in that sort of corporate environment. But do you think the safety and trajectory of a good degree can actually hold some people back from achieving more in like an entrepreneurial space?
Without a doubt, without a doubt. I'm actually seeing it with, and they probably don't like it when I say it, but when I look at my close friends that I study with, or all my peers that I study with, I'd say 95% stuck to the corporate route, and only 5% eventually went on the more risky entrepreneurial route. And it's often, and I don't know if I'm spot on with it, but it's often actually the dropouts from varsity that ended up creating successful businesses just because they had to. Like, they were put in a position like, okay, well, I didn't finish my degree. Let's get going and let's build a business. And some of these guys, I'm quite jealous because they actually dropped out. So my studies in Belgium were 5 years. Some of them dropped out in year 2 or 3, and it actually allowed them a lot more time to build a business. So some of them that dropped out, they've already now sold the business because they just actually had a headway of 2 or 3 years. So sometimes I'm jealous of it. Maybe I should have done the same. But I think once you've gone through your degree, you're kind of obviously not guaranteed, but you kind of have a minimum salary expectation. And you just start banking on it. And I think that's the biggest. I was lucky because I came out of university, was in my first job for not even a year, and then we started the business. So I was never used to a salary pattern for myself that I was like, flip, I don't have that much anyways, I might as well take the risk. Whereas if you have a really steady corporate job, I think it becomes, you just expect that minimum guarantee, and you can't have these salaries when you start a business. Like, it's impossible. So you're going to need to take a step back.
Yeah. And also your risk tolerance changes as you get more responsibilities as you get older. So I can imagine those guys, when they're younger, dropping out of university, there's no one depending on you. You can take more risk, you can fail more frequently and learn all those lessons in a shorter amount of time. So by the time you do have to look after people, you've got an established business, but you're an entrepreneur, not working for someone else.
100%. If I sometimes ask myself the question at this age, if I would have to start again, not living on a salary for a year, it would be hard. I mean, you're living with 5-6 other people to get your expense down. Like, you're obviously living a certain lifestyle that would definitely be harder to do that in your mid-30s instead of doing it in your early 20s. So without a doubt, I think it's funny because actually the most successful entrepreneurs are very often actually in their 30s or 40s. I think the average age is like 44 or 5, something like that I recently was reading about. So it's actually quite old, but it definitely has advantages to just start early, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree. And now you're a mentor at the Allan Orbis Foundation. What motivated you to become a mentor?
Many things. The organization itself is phenomenal. I'm not here to just market it, but honestly, so I don't know if you know the story, but Allan Gray, from his personal wealth, he pledged quite a bit of money, nearly all his funds, to the foundation. And what I've seen there is, so we mentor for entrepreneurship. So really, if you decide to go on to entrepreneurship route, the students are basically audited and like kind of picked from quite a young age. So very often they go through the program from when they're sometimes even younger, but on average 15, 16. And then Allan Gray guides you all the way till after university. So they have to go to university. They have to have a university degree when they go through the program. But while they're in university, they're already stimulated in entrepreneurship. And then I often mentor these students while they're doing their university degree. They have to come up in the weekends. They have to come up with business concepts, and they go eventually to a final pitch stage. And very often, actually, the student carries through. If the pitch is successful, they carry through with that concept or business idea. And after university, they actually pursue that opportunity full time. But 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% 100% extremely grateful to be doing it. Brilliant students, like seriously brilliant students. And I think the one thing as a European, we take a lot of things for granted. We take education, university. It's relatively cheap in Belgium, where I come from. In contrary to what it is in South Africa, it's expensive. It's very expensive. So the students are extremely grateful and eager. Like when I went to university, to be honest, I did the bare minimum, and I just thought, like, as long as I get through this, I've got my degree. Whereas the students there are so motivated and so eager that it really gives me a different experience on what they are going through. Like it's mind blowing, actually.
That's so interesting. And so we mentioned some of the people that you know that dropped out, and like that was kind of an advantage. But now the people you mentor have to go through university. Are they still as motivated at the end of their degree to start an entrepreneurial journey, or do some just end up going into the normal corporate world because they have that degree and they can fall back on it?
Yeah. I'm not involved with the policy discussions there. It's been a while that I actually got involved in. So I don't know what the updated rules or policies are with Allan Gray, but it used to be that there was you have to pursue a degree, but then I think they started making an exception that if your business is already to this success rate, you can drop out of university because you've proven that it's a very viable business idea and that you should pursue the opportunity. The one thing though is that culturally, often you are pushed from a family point of view, from an environment around you. The security receiving with a degree is a lot higher. So, for example, if you finish your doctor's degree or your law degree, you kind of guaranteed a salary that will be able to sustain yourself, but often the family too. And as a family, it's often also actually put forward like, no, like we prefer don't take risks now. Be grateful you've gotten to this point to be able to get a degree. Let's take the safe route and pursue this instead of actually, why would you've gotten this opportunity, why would you now suddenly start to take all the risk and start a business that 9 out of 10 often fail, which is just the statistics that are applied to it. So that's the kind of like pros and cons that they often go through. In saying that, very often the most ideal route, and I speak now, I could be wrong, but it used to be like this in the past. The most ideal route a student could follow through was university degree, 3 years of corporate, and then actually start your business, which I often agree with because that working experience in a corporate really does give you the kind of knowledge and baggage that you require to start a business. So many different trajectories to follow, but it's always contested.
Yeah, that does make sense. I mean, particularly in South Africa, the safer route, particularly if you're coming from a family that no one else has been to university, that degree is so valuable. And I understand why your family members and parents want you to hold on to that and use it because you've now worked so hard to get there. It makes perfect sense.
It makes sense. And it's difficult because the students are often torn between the two different routes, which I fully understand too. So I guess from my upbringing, I often have a safety net with my family around me and your friends in your family, whereas they often don't have that safety net. So your willingness to take risk is also different, unfortunately. So yeah, it's definitely difficult sometimes.
Quick interruption from me. The podcast is starting to gain traction, which is amazing, and thank you so much for the support. If I could ask you to do one little thing, could you please rate this podcast on whichever podcast platform you listen on? That little action goes a lot further than you think and would really help the podcast grow. Thanks in advance. I really appreciate it. Back to the episode. Yeah, and apart from that decision of whether to go corporate or start their own business right out of university. What other kind of challenges do you see young entrepreneurs facing? Is there like similar kind of problems, or is it unique to each person?
I think it's often unique. But again, like I think from kind of what I mentioned from the culture point of view, I think that's by far a common thread that I've been seeing that is being pushed through. In saying that, what I particularly enjoy about South Africa is that in Europe you can kind of count on your government, whereas obviously in South Africa the majority of the time you can't, and they'll fail you. So there's a lot of young entrepreneurs who just seek these opportunities. Like it honestly surprises me and it impresses me so much. Same in a township environment. There are so many bright entrepreneurs who just pick up on these opportunities. But again, many of them are not given the same fair chance as what we being given. Your access to capital, your access to knowledge. Like if you can combine two worlds, and you can combine them together, you've got major capacities actually to start a successful business. And that's, I guess, what I enjoy about it. Similarly with the network, because of our parents and friends and family, the network we've built up, very often they don't have access to these kind of networks. If you can help and combine the networks and the connections you already have, if you can help and combine them together, you often create amazing synergies on how you can scale a business, or you can help them to scale the business quite a bit faster.
That's awesome. Yeah, I can see that being quite rewarding. And now I want to shift slightly to sort of in and around what Supernova does with the advancements of like tech and AI. Does this open up new opportunities for you guys?
Yes, definitely. It's always kind of like high on our radar. I must say it's a difficult topic because there is, like, particularly now, there's like an influx of AI and ChatGPT and there's so much coming your way that it's very hard to actually start with like, what's my starting point? Like where do we start and where do we begin? I think some of the things that we've seen in our business is that we like let's jump on this, and then actually, is it really a use case? Very often it's fun and good for like a month, but it's not something that we consistently are going to be using. So I think the hardest part is to actually dive in it and then really decide for yourself what parts of AI or the automations are going to be successful to our business. In our business, our vision is we are a high transaction business. So there's a lot of transactions running through our business. Right now, there's a lot of human involvement still. That's obviously and it's prone to errors, and time. It just takes time. And that's kind of what we want to get out of the business. So we want to automate as much as possible. And I think where the AI, so basically we've got our softwares, and then we've got the softwares of the retailers. And then right now we already have an API connection in between. So the two often chat with each other. But the part where it becomes interesting is where there's now an element of AI on top of it that actually can feed you with data, analyze it better, and then take that data and feed it back into the software system. So multiple ways. For costing purposes, ChatGPT or some tools can help you with better product descriptions so that it has better keywords and it better taglines. It can help you with pricing. It can help you with trend forecasting. There's so many things in there that we have now someone in the business that is nearly his full focus to look at what are the opportunities, what are the parts of a business that we want to automate, and then we tackle step by step by step. Because if it's one avalanche of AI, I don't feel like we're going to win. So we're really tackling it step by step in automating our business. But without a doubt, it's our goal to eventually have a business where it can fully and accurately forecast your stock. it forecasts your trends. It already makes a suggestion to your retailers, like based on your data that we've gotten from you, we feel like these are the right products, these are the quantities we suggest to you. And it basically loops around, because if they accept it, it already orders these quantities, and it kind of becomes like one circle. That's eventually where we want to get to.
I think it's becoming more and more popular these days, hiring for a role that's just focuses on automation. And I mean, with platforms like make.com, where you can create links between platforms and applications that just automates the whole process, it's a no-brainer in a business, particularly like yours.
No, exactly. Because I mean, but I think particularly because we are a high volume business, like there are so many transactions on our marketplaces and so on, so many transactions running through that if there is no form of automation and AI involved with it, you will always make errors, and it's just super hard to scale. It really allows us to scale the way we want to scale right now. But again, it's proven to be, AI makes your life easier, but it's still it still doesn't solve everything. Yeah, exactly. Yeah. Exactly.
And what has been the biggest challenge while running Supernova so far?
I must say, like, there's pros and cons. I mean, it's a difficult question because I think any business deals with struggles. I don't think there is an easy business. I mean, there probably are in scales like fairly easy businesses to run and very hard business to run. So there's definitely a scale, but I think there is no easy business to run. So I'm part of Entrepreneurs Organization, and then you dive deep. So they put you in businesses with different industries. They don't want you to be sitting in the same industry. So I've sit in a business with a tourism business, a law firm, a software business. So it's all kind of different industries. And from the outside, when you look at the business, you're like, flip, that's a fairly straightforward business to run. Once you deep dive, you get to know these businesses from the inside out. Your summary is always like, I totally underestimated that. Like the struggles that they have, it's something that I would have never expected. So similar with Supernova, I think the struggles that we have are quite similar to other businesses. Obviously, they're industry particular. But I think for us right now, it's actually just some of the struggles that we have. We rely on a lot of different parties. So, for example, if the ports in South Africa, if they're not maintained the way they should be, and you get a backlog in the ports, like the Cape Town or the Durban port, our containers are going to be delayed. It's affecting our cash flow. It's affecting our lead times. It's affecting our customers eventually. Like, there's nothing you can do about it. Like, it's fully out of your control. And I think these are struggles where that's the part where I struggle with the most, because I have no power, or I've got no impact. I can't make any impact on it. And I think that's what frustrates me the most in the business sometimes.
Yeah, that I can see how that would be frustrating. And
yeah,
what has been the most enjoyable part of the journey?
People you work with, without a doubt. I always, like, I've never, like, profit generation, like, it's great. Like, if you're a profitable business and you work out your budgets, and like, great. Like, obviously that's, sometimes you would say like that's what you do it for, but actually the majority of the times it's not. So obviously, yes, you want a profitable business, but actually the creating of together with the team, like it creates such a tight bond with your team. And for example, when I see like you're bringing 20, 30 people that didn't know each other before, you bring them together and you create like quite a unique product. That's what really drives me, and that's what gives me the great energy. Similarly, we're like, just when just people get along well, and there's a good culture in the business, and then they go out in the weekends and they become kind of like friends, and like seeing that, and that you actually created that where these people got together and created these tight bonds, like that honestly gives me probably the biggest satisfaction in the business.
Yeah, that's amazing. And if you could give an actionable piece of advice to someone who has all these business ideas, but they just haven't taken action, what would you tell them?
Just do it. Literally just do it. It's simple, because I think I always laugh at it with my consultancy friends. Whoever's in the consulting field, like you're going to overanalyze. You're going to come up with 20 different Excel sheets and different scenarios. There will always be a worst case scenario, always. So yes, I think it's good to make a risk profile, like what we chatted about in the beginning of our chats. So I'm not saying you shouldn't do it, but there will always be a risk. There will always be a bad or worst case scenario. You must just measure for yourself how big the risk is and how much you're willing to take some risk. But at one stage, it's funny because this morning I had a meeting with someone who hasn't been for so long in the business. I think 9 years of retail scars you and brings you a lot of PTSD, and like you've been through a lot of scenarios you didn't expect. This person was only in retail for 8 months, and he still had a lot of naivety, but it actually admired that kind of naivety. Like, it's good not to know of all the bad case scenarios, because you're just a bit naive and you just go for it. You just do it. And often by doing it, yes, there will be roadblocks coming along your way, but you'll probably end up a lot further as the person who kept on doubting and doubting and doubting, to actually jump into it. And then the one other thing I want to say about it, and it keeps on frustrating me, is that right now there's this and I mentioned it already, but there's this very big young founders. The more money you raise, the more successful your business is. And there's this very big focus on, I need to have this Airbnb, Uber kind of idea, then I need to raise $10, $20 million. And I think really, like, yes, there are unicorns. Like, there's nothing wrong with trying to aspire to be a unicorn. But there are so many other businesses, so many others, that it will not become a unicorn, but that are amazing businesses that you don't need so much risk. You don't need to be a loss-making business for years and years and years. You don't need to raise money. There's a lot of smaller concepts that are great businesses that are profitable immediately straight from the beginning. And I often feel like these days they fall off the radar because the focus is so much on, like, I need to be a unicorn or otherwise it's not a good business. And I think that's something that I always try to say to, like there are many good businesses around. And you don't need to be it doesn't need to be an Uber or Airbnb idea. There's very simple businesses around that make good money and are super fun to do.
Yeah, I agree. That's great advice. And I've actually had a few discussions about the whole naivety entrepreneur thing, and how, because you aren't scarred, like you said, by that particular industry and sort of learned what not to do, you're able to take those risks because you don't know it can't be done or it hasn't been done, and they normally break barriers and actually make more progress than just assuming that it can't be done because that's the way it's been for years.
Without a doubt. And sometimes when I had the meeting this morning, I was actually wishing for myself to have the same naivety again. Like, it's strange, but it can help you so much. You're going to knock on doors that now, with this PTSD and scarring that I have already, I'm already sometimes going to be like, it's not going to work. Like, and I wish actually I had it again. And it was a good fresh reminder for myself. Like, I should be that, like, I should bring it back in my day-to-day business thinking again, because it will help the business. Am I going to make mistakes with it? Without a doubt. I will make bad calls sometimes, but I'd rather make a couple of bad calls, but some of the good calls that I make by doing that will definitely push me further as just deciding not to do it.
Definitely. And before we finish, I'd just like to ask about your decision to live in South Africa. What made you decide you wanted to live there and then stay for all these years?
I mean, South Africa is an amazing place. Like, and I feel like often foreigners say it. Like, I've traveled to a couple of places already in South Africa. Just for me, the life quality versus, in general, actually, the life quality is amazing. I am quite a passionate water sports person, so I love my surfing and kite surfing and these things. So it allowed me to have the lifestyle that I wanted to have, which is being in the water quite a bit of time. But I always told myself, like, I've put in 6 years of my life in studying, and So I definitely invested quite a couple of years of my life in my degree. And I basically always said, like, if I do decide to live in South Africa for the lifestyle, the one sacrifice I can't make is my career. So, and it's just a personal. There's nothing wrong with either or. If you decide, then you focus fully on lifestyle. Sometimes I wish I could do the same, but for myself, I decided my career can't sacrifice. So whatever I would have achieved in Europe, I want to achieve in South Africa, with obviously the added benefit of having the lifestyle and the water sports that I can do here.
Amazing. And do you think your environment plays an important role in your mental health and success?
Yeah, hugely, without a doubt. I mean, like two things. So one, the decompress that I can, like, if I would live in a big city and I can't do water sports, I wouldn't be able to decompress as I can now. Like, for me, it's really my form of meditation, yoga, whatever I mean, everyone has their thing where they can decompress. For me, that's without a doubt water sports. And there's something else I want to say, but it jumped me now. But for me, the decompress part, that's actually the most important. Like, it really allows me to switch off. And I've worked a lot, to be honest. It's at least 10, 12 hours a day in the week. But my weekends, they feel like proper holidays. I normally don't really work in weekends, and they really allow me to fully decompress. In Europe, often you used to live from holiday to holiday. Like, you plan a holiday. Like, in 2 months, I've got a holiday to the sun somewhere. And that's kind of like the lead times to work on. For me, my weekends, I don't need to take a lot of leave, because my weekends honestly feel like every 5 days, I'm already looking forward to another holiday of 2 days. And that's really helped me in managing or coping with stress that I have.
That's amazing.
What I wanted to say about it jumped back again.
Yeah.
Environment, what helps me, and I'm not here to promote it in general, but the Entrepreneurs Organization, like EO, but there's YPO, there's many different organizations. That environment, hugely beneficial for me. I just left EO now because I took a gap year, but I've been in there for 4 years now. You are together with entrepreneurs. Everyone is going through the same journey. Sometimes you feel like with the problems you have, it's very hard to go to your partner or your parents or friends, because you often feel like they don't, like, if I have to explain the whole issue, it's nearly more tiring than actually getting the advice. Whereas if you're in these organizations, you get each other immediately. You go through the same problems. Everyone has, at some stage, cash flow issues, or like, it's the level of understanding is very high. And that environment helps me tremendously. So I would advise anyone to actually, doesn't matter what organization, but to actually find a community like this to kind of like decompress and run each other through each other's issues.
I can imagine that being extremely helpful. Thank you for remembering and mentioning that. So before we end, I usually hand over the mic and ask if you have a question for me.
Nice one. The question would be, with your podcast, did you actually have many excuses yourself before you actually were like, flip, this is an opportunity for me and I'm going to jump into it?
100%. For me, I don't know about you, but a lot of ideas I have, and when I tell people about them, quite a few of them sort of fizzle out over time. You're like super excited about the idea, but you don't do anything about it. Then over time, it's slowly gets pushed to the back of your mind. And eventually it's like a memory, that thing you could have done, and what if? And I had the idea for this podcast, and it almost became that. It almost became that idea at the back of my head. But I was getting frustrated with the way I was speaking, because I used to teach English in Hong Kong for a bit, and so I was simplifying my English a lot. And so when I was having conversations with people, there were words on the tip of my tongue, and they weren't coming, like the vocabulary just wasn't coming to my head quick enough and things like that. And so I wanted to find a way to learn about entrepreneurship, but also practice my speaking, stop saying a lot, that type of stuff. And this was the perfect way to do it. I had the idea and I was like, okay, just take the leap, buy some equipment and just go. And I'm so happy I started. So yeah, this will be episode 22 and I'm not planning on stopping anytime soon. So I'm so glad I started.
Amazing. But that's exactly it. Sometimes you just have to jump. You just have to do it. Across our business, we work on Asana. So we've got so many different boards with all the different teams. And I've got a dream board for myself, but I mean, there's many ways to do it. But whenever I've got something that I think like flip, that's actually could be a good business idea, I just put it on my dream board. And it's always good to be reminded of it. Like you say, some ideas are going to fizzle out, but I so often go back to the dream board and I look at like, what are the things that I've written down? And there will be that one thing that stands out still. And that's when I think you're like, now I have to do it. Like, we have to commit to it. We just have to do it. So it's nice that you just did it. I mean, literally, it comes down to that, I think.
Yeah, and that's a great idea with the idea board. But it's so interesting that it's like a muscle that you have to keep flexing, even though you've proven to yourself that you started Supernova or like I started this podcast. It's like the new things still seem a little difficult to start. It's not like you've done it once and you can just start anything. You have to keep telling yourself that like starting is the good thing and you have to like get over that hump each time.
100%. It's funny because in the entrepreneurs organization, the deepest point often for entrepreneurs, and I'm exaggerating now, but often the deepest point is when they've sold a business. When you start a business, you aspire to actually sell your business at one day. So it looks like because they always call it the mountain. So like you're on top of the mountain and that's the goal. But not every, but a lot of them, they've sold it and they fall and they drop off that cliff and they go into weird spaces, but it takes them time to actually crawl out of it, because you have to start from scratch again. The person you were, your identity and everything you've created is gone now. That business is gone, and starting over again seems always to be quite challenging and difficult. So it's funny. Like, it's not because you've done it once that immediately it will be like in a finger beat you can do this again.
Yeah, definitely. Well, thanks for joining me today, Jan. I really enjoyed it and I really appreciate you making the time. If people want to find out more about you and Supernova, where can they do so?
Just the website, supernova.brands.co.za. That's the website. We don't really focus on the holding company because that's the holding company. It's actually the brands that we focus on, that we're building. That's the focus for our business, and that's the B2C. But they can always have a look on the website and they'll find all the brands that are available here in South Africa.
Awesome. Thanks, Jan. Chat soon. Thanks for listening. I really appreciate you making it all the way to the end. I hope you enjoyed the episode. One more quick reminder before you go. I have a weekly newsletter by the same name, Another Excuse, where I cover 4 topics: something that has changed my perception, a tool that could be useful to you, content that is actually worth consuming, and a concept that I try break down and explain. If this sounds of any interest to you and you need a kick up the arse, then you can subscribe at the link below. Thanks for joining me again, and I'll see you next week.